What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bay Rats and Buoys. I'm your host, Captain Gaige, and I have the pleasure of sitting here today with Hollywood producer Gregg Sharp, the CEO of the World Series of Arm Wrestling on ESPN. Super excited to have you on. Thanks for joining us, Greg.
Captain Gaige, our pleasure. I mean, I've been excited all week to get on your show.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable because, not only are you an amazing fisherman, which we're going to get into later on and show them some of the great stories that you have, but you just have a lot going on. You're a super busy guy. You are all over the United States. I know the trips with Megan and your son. I mean, you get quality time all over the place, but tell me a little bit about the arm wrestling that you have going on now, because I know you're heading down to South Carolina for a big event.
Yeah, we are. I appreciate that. So, we're in our fifth season. And if, in the world of business, if you get past five, you're doing okay, I think they say. So we're in on number five, and we are super excited. We're going to be in our largest regional tournament value this year, and we're thinking it's going to be our biggest finals ever. And we're kicking it off this coming Saturday down in Ladson, South Carolina at the Honky Tonk Saloon. We've got the Carolina Chaos team. He's our host.
Nice.
These are a bunch of great guys, incredible arm wrestlers, intense dudes, like intense dudes, and just all around great people. So, we're heading out there. I'm super stoked, and we've got a lineup this year that's going to be hard to beat on any value. I think we're really moving in the right direction.
Nice. It's really good to hear because you've been working hard on this, no doubt. This thing has really grown into something super big for you, and I'm excited for you. Really am. Now,
no, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, there are different divisions. We're going to break this down because there's a lot of listeners out there that have no idea about the arm wrestling, which is great. And then you have your fans that, can't get enough of it. So the people that have no idea about this whatsoever, tell them a little bit about the different divisions that you have for the pro and the men's and the women, the amateurs.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. So, arm wrestling is a weird dynamical sport, right? I mean, it's kind of like the alpha males, what do they call it now? Paddleball, pickleball.
Pickleball, yeah.
If you're an alpha male, you can get into arm wrestling, or alpha female, and have a division that's right for you. So we break it down into a couple of different dynamics, which is kind of universal for the sport. We have what we call an open pro class, which is a money class. That is, where your best regional, national, world arm wrestlers are going to compete on these regional ends. We break it down in a way that's very film friendly for TV and network. And while we do it, we create four basic weight classes. We have 176, we have 209, we have 239, and then we have super heavyweight. So anybody 241 or over, because we give a 2-pound allowance, falls into that super heavyweight class.
Wow.
And then we do that for the left arm, and we do it for the right arm. On the pro side, we do exactly the same similar setup in terms of weight classes for the amateur men. So as they continue to matriculate up on a competition level, they're not trying to guess where their class is going to be. They're just going to kind of seamlessly move into that. And then we have women's, which we typically break down into two categories. And that's historically because there's not a lot of women arm wrestlers out there. And we have the 154 and under class, and we have the 155 plus class, left and right arms as well. And that's just an open division. We really don't have enough arm wrestlers in the world of women's arm wrestling to be able to create what I'll call an amateur pro selection. They're all kind of, hodgepodged into being pro at that level. But hopefully the trajectory of the sport changes that, where amateur and women pro weight classes can start to compete, but we're just not there as an entity. And then we have masters, and everybody has a different view of masters. We use 50 years and older. There's a lot of tournaments that happen across, the globe where they consider 40 and over masters, but 40, you're right in your prime of arm wrestling. 50, you are too. I mean, there's the top arm wrestlers in the world right now. A high percentage of them are over 50 years old. But masters are 50 plus, and then we break that into two weight classes. We have 210 and lower, 211 and up. And the reason why is because if you're pulling, if you're in that elite class, or we'll call open class pro at 50, 50 plus years old, you're still pulling in the main tournament. You're not pulling in the masters per se, but you may be pulling in it, in the regionals because you're looking for some extra exposure. But in the finals, most of those guys will gravitate just to the pro side because that's where all the money's at.
Right. So you hear that, women? There's definitely a in for you if you're into this as an alpha female and you want to get into arm wrestling. There's definitely some opens as far as getting into it as a position. Wouldn't that be right to get them? They want to get involved. How do they get involved?
Yeah, it starts by going to a practice, right? I mean, you have to actually like the sport,
Right.
and that's kind of the hindrance, I think, with women in general gravitating to sport because it's a very aggressive sport, right? I mean, it's not a passive sport, and what I mean by that is you can play tennis, you can play basketball, you can play a lot of different sports as women and as alpha women, and be very competitive in them. Uh, but to actually put your body through a very strenuous and potentially serious injury positions, women typically aren't going to gravitate to that per se. And that's, I think, what's one of the reasons why the sport hasn't really gained a lot of popularity there because of the fact that injury can happen.
Gotcha.
But if you're a strength, we see a lot of women in strength. If you're a fitness competitor, when it comes to strength sports, you're a competitor when it comes to bodybuilding because that's still a strength sport. We finding women are starting to move in this direction. But I think the other thing that has to catch up with it, Captain Gaige, is that with volume will come money, and I think that historically, and I'm guilty of it as a CEO of World Series of Arm Wrestling. Historically, there's not enough participation to be able to incent the female athlete as we do the men, because they're outnumbered. Men pullers to women probably 20, maybe 30 to 1.
Wow.
So it's not an equal playing field. So, but if they love the sport or they love to compete and they're in the strength sport and they really want to figure out if it's something for them, there are teams and practices all over the country that they can get involved in, and that's always the safest way to start.
Right.
So
there you go. And we talked about this in the intro that you heard me say ESPN, which is congratulations to you because the World Series of Arm Wrestling is on ESPN, that's a huge feat all on its own, right? Now, explain to the people how they can watch this and where they can see it so that they can get more involved in it, because now there's people watching this saying, hey, I want to go see some arm wrestling. How can they go see it and where should they look?
I appreciate that. It's so World Series of Arm Wrestling on ESPN has a unique value. We have our finals on there, and so our finals are on ESPN2. They're on ESPN HD, ESPN. If you're in a Latin American country, ESPN Deportes. So that's never on a schedule, meaning that I don't
Right.
have. I can't tell you when they're going to continue to air it. I know we're airing probably 20 times a month right now.
Gotcha.
They have it on their app. You can find it on the ESPN app and type in World Series of Arm Wrestling. But our mainstay when it comes to being seen is very atypical because most arm wrestling videos find their way to YouTube. But we're actually on Tubi, which is owned by Fox, and Fox Sports, and we're on Prime, Amazon Prime. And that's another big home. Right? I don't want to say we're not on Radiate TV because I own Radiate TV, but we're there as well. But when you look at big volumes of people, Tubi is somewhere in 130 to 150 million viewers a month. Prime is somewhere north of 100 million viewers per month. I think we've seen well over 38 million viewers on just our show on ESPN. So we really have a unique value that's kind of put us in a different level, which I'm enjoying, and being able to continually take small steps to make positive growth in the sport, which is kind of the reason why I think that the sport hasn't lasted on major platforms in the past. So we're trying to do it right. And we're definitely where we want to be. ESPN is the biggest global platform for sports. It doesn't get any bigger than that.
No, that's why we brought it up in the intro, and that's huge. That it does. You're right, 100%. It does not get any bigger than ESPN, but you can't knock out Prime and Tubi and Radiant because those are where an audience can go watch it. So it doesn't matter where they're watching it as long as they go and watch it. So they're part of that number, that criteria.
And the funny thing is, a lot of people have asked, why don't you put it on YouTube? And listen, YouTube is the largest by far, platform in the world. And I was at a streaming conference last June in Denver, and the guy from YouTube, not being pretentious, but being factful. He summed it all up. He said, listen, you take everybody else, you take Radiates of the world and all of the thousands of Radiates of the world, you take all the way up to the Netflix of the world, and you group everybody together. That doesn't equate to a third of the people that watch YouTube.
Right.
And then he started to give the analytics of 500 videos a day, and I don't know, something ridiculously as 10 million viewers per second. But the reason why I did not go that route is because I believe the only way as a sport we get better is if we become unique. And what I mean by that is that we need to find our way out of the mass and put ourselves in very atypical, concentrated values that we don't normally see to alleviate that myth of being a niche sport. And that was the important part for me is how do we get it to the Tubies and to the Primes and to the ESPNs and not fall into the rhyme and reason of let's try to get as many views as we can on YouTube. And I think that set us apart, and it's been a very strategic play for us, which has been important. And it's been important not just because of our growth, but for our sponsors, for our uniqueness, and kind of our assimilation into the world of just mainstream TV, which has been great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, like we said, the ESPN, I mean, that's credit to you. That's all the hard work that you put into that it even landed on ESPN because it's going to grow there. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, we're definitely, lucky, blessed, whatever you want to say. We've got to where we want to be. Now it's like when Arnold was talking on Pumping Iron, he goes, if you're the lion on top, you're going to eat, and we got to stay on top, right? And so we don't want to fall back. We want to continue to keep our place there, and I think season 5 and our schedule and our storytelling and what we're doing kind of continues to keep us, at that on that highest echelon of sports within arm wrestling.
Now, we mentioned this in the beginning, you're a Hollywood producer and a huge background in this. And that also helped the arm wrestling because now you have The House, I see. You want to touch on that because I see that now you're looking for The House 2, season 2.
Yeah.
So season 1.
I appreciate that. The House was, I'm a big believer in success. And what I mean by that is I look at people who are successful, and I'm not trying to copy. I think the word better is to emulate their success, right? I mean, I'm not at all looking to create a mirrored image, but I looked at the success of the UFC and watching the UFC grow, owning Explode Fight Series back in the 2010s, and knowing the challenges of a regional promoter versus the bigger guys. The uniqueness of the UFC was created when they entered the timeline of The Ultimate Fighter. And The Ultimate Fighter changed the spectrum of how the sport was viewed because it introduced characters, personalities, and drama. And that was really the point in which the UFC, and I think that anyone who's ever been involved in the UFC, and I've known a lot of them, will tell you that was what separated. And I think that The House, being a reality show for arm wrestling, where we put 10 guys in a house and we broke them up into teams, and those teams competed in an arm wrestling scenario and real life scenario. I'm hoping that we're going to see a very similar reaction to the Ultimate Fighter did with the UFC, bringing more mainstream viewers, sponsors, supporters, and that's the win, right? I mean, that's that's the goal of why we did the house, and now we're on the tail end of editing, which is always an arduous task. You get it filmed, and then you have to go through hours and hours and hours and weeks. In this case, the footage to really find those great nuggets, and then and then get it out into the streaming, which will be here. I think we're pretty well projected for end of May, early June on this, but then be able to show that we're continuous, right? I mean, success is not concept driven. Success is long-term performance, and getting into the second season will categorically show a level of success that we're able to continue on with this outside that pilot season, and that's the goal. And hopefully those two things will come together: the reality series and the World Series, all in one, and help get us to what I would call that early growth stages that the UFC scene, where we're going to see more mainstream sponsors come into the fold, which, to be honest, we have, and that's that's the credit to where we're going.
Right, and I love it. And I've been following the UFC since the Gracie days and the Shamrocks, and in the beginning when it was really it was a different sport. It really was, and what it is now, it's really evolved and grown into something else. But I did see the house, and not the house or whatever the name of the show was for the UFC, and you got to see the fighters in a different light than just being in the ring when you saw them for their introduction and the pre-fight interviews and the weigh-ins where they caused chaos and you got smashing, chairs over heads and getting crazy on the stage just to build up hype for a fight, which I get from the promoter's standpoint. But being behind the camera and seeing them in the light that you saw them at a house where they lived with each other and had ruckus and, their testosterone and all that fun stuff that comes with it, that's what added that different element to the UFC. That we got to see, that when you fought in those teams and you won, you actually went off to the UFC and fight in front of big fan bases.
Well, and it's interesting, and I'm lucky enough that I've had some experience in the world of MMA and knowing the UFC from I'll call it arm's length viewpoint. Having a lot of our fighters leave, explode, and go to the UFC, which we actually still have fighters, albeit we haven't thrown an event since 2017. And Captain, in May, we'll talk about the new Warrior Fight League that we're bringing back.
Nice.
But we still actually have fighters from 2016 that are competing on a championship level in the UFC. But one of the things that people don't realize about the UFC, which they were very smart, they didn't look at that point. I'm talking that 2009, 2016, 17 timeframe. They were not interested in the best fighters in the world per se. They were interested in the best looking fighters in the world. They were looking for guys who could talk on the mic after a fight was over. They were looking for guys that had the right body types, the right skill sets, the right fan bases. Now, do I have a value of a text or an email or something like that when it came to fighters and who they may want? Absolutely not. But I can tell you some of the criteria that they wanted, that secret criteria, the secret sauce. Do the fighters at that time, were they selling a lot of tickets in their hometowns, right? Were they popular or getting popular on social media?
Right.
They were watching pay-per-views, right? I mean, you look at the UFC and the numbers. They would look at geographically how a fighter, responded to or geographically their fan base responded to being on pay-per-views. They used all that, and one of the things that people don't realize is that you could have been the best fighter at the time in your weight class. And I have a perfect example of a fighter here in San Diego that this happened to, that won the skills challenge, won the one-on-one challenge, the first two rounds of casting for the Ultimate Fighter. But then they brought him into the interview and they made him take his shirt off. And unfortunately, he was the guy that was 220 that cut down to 185, and he looked like a sagging, a sagging 85-year-old man.
Wow.
But he was number one going into the interview process, and they completely said no to him. So they were real. Let me say this to you, Captain Gaige. He really had a potential to have won that season. And I'm not going to say the season. I'm not going to say the name of the fighter.
Right.
I know from behind the scenes and talking to people that was the end root of his not getting there, and ultimately, he never made it to the UFC. And but that's similar to what Hollywood's all about, and what builds. The house. We started our first season and we didn't look at people per se as, what were their body types in terms of where they, do they have a ripped set of abs or things like that. But we definitely looked at how popular they are within their own, social media sets to try to encourage the viewership to come. And that's a good lesson that we learned through history of watching UFC succeed. And now the UFC gets $7.7 billion from Paramount, for 7 seasons. I just would love, 7.7 million. I'd be set, right? I mean, we'd be great for at least 7 years.
Right. Exactly. No, but listen, you're putting a lot of hard work into it. Now, I'm sitting in a 10,000 square foot recording studio where we actually film. We have green screen, cyc walls, black cycs, white cycs. There's so much stuff going on in this one area that nobody understands more of what you're talking about when it comes down to producing the house, and what goes on. And people don't understand how much work goes on in post. After filming, just dumping the footage, then editing in post and doing the short edits to go through and see what you have and to review it all is such a time-taking task that a lot goes into it. Now to say what makes the cut, what are we using, what are we not using, and the camera work.
And even when you get to that final cut, right? I mean,
right.
You're always second guessing yourself, no matter where you're at.
Absolutely.
It's a very difficult. Sometimes you've got what you think is a golden nugget, and you're going to leave it out. Because you worry whether or not it's going to be received well, right? I mean, it's
right.
There's always those concerns. You play that game, especially in Hollywood. What makes sense? What is entertaining versus offensive? What gravitates people to watch the show, and very, very difficult. I was talking with Paramount back in January, and they're very conscientious of what we just talked about in terms of influencers, product sponsorship, integration into shows. That's really the main. That's the secret sauce these days, and I think the house has that. We have multiple sponsors. We have Rockwell, we have Bucked Up, we have Cali Sport. We've got some local sponsors that helped us. That they're all going to integrate their social media to help pushing it, and we have a core group of guys that have a very good following that's also going to do it. So, with a little bit of luck in a lot of Captain Gaige's podcast time, I think we'll get there.
No, there's no doubt about it. You definitely will. And it's not my podcast time. You actually have a platform for podcasting, and it's growing, and the growth potential of the podcast these days. It's a very, very popular thing that's going on. It's not even just a fad anymore. Now, we brought on sponsors. We went from hosting, I'm in my second season. April 15th, I kick off the third season of Bay Rats Buoys. We've already launched a fishing club. We host a striped bass invitational where we tag striped bass for conservation. We tagged 65 striped bass in our first tournament. And we're launching this year the Fishing League for the Long Island Sound. So, a podcast starts somewhere. You don't know where it's going to go, where it's going to end up. And you just got to stay consistent, just keep it going and see if you're doing it all right, things will happen and fall into place. But it does take a lot of hard work. And I don't think anybody knows that more than you.
I do, but let's talk about something that really gets me reeled in, right? A little bit of fishing fun there. You've got this fishing league coming on. I feel I'm gonna flip the switch here on you. I'm gonna bring a little bit of you into this. I'm coming out there in May, at the end of May. I saw your website. We talked about this. I love to fish. I love to fish competitively. Do you have a tournament towards the? I think I'm out there for a May 30th on Long Island regional. It's the Jason Vale, who is an arm wrestler that passed a few years back, and we do a tribute tournament to him uh, on Long Island. But the weekend of May 30th, is there a fishing competition there that I can throw my money in and see how I do against everyone?
Well, this is the beauty. This is the beauty of talking to Captain Gaige, because I will make sure there's a tournament for the end of May, because not only
Nice.
our fishing club is challenging other clubs. So we're doing some really, really cool stuff, but we would love nothing more than to get you out there. Now, listen, I've had you on the boat with Megan. You guys were very competitive. I know what I'm dealing with when it comes to you and fishing. And man, do you have some serious fishing stories, because you told them on the boat. But competitively, absolutely. We're super excited. In fact, I just had my first fishing club meeting last Thursday, and I started off by telling everybody about the league and what we're going to do with the league and what's going on. And, it's starting to blow up. Teams already started registering. And every month there's a tournament in the league for a featured species. And I said to them, I said, we're kicking off this club on April 15th, and we are challenging another club or two. And we're going to have a 2-week long striped bass battle on opening day, April 15th until April 30th. You'll have 15 days to go out there on any day that you can and fish as hard as you can. We'll probably pick like the first 5 longest fish. Nothing can be done by weight anymore, because, you catch a 50-inch fish, you got to let it go. So everything's by
Well,
measurements, which will be used by a specific league or tournament ruler, which we use.
Well, I could say this: if we can figure out a way to collaborate, which is going to be easy.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have the arm wrestlers, you have the fishing boats and captains. It would be great to have an arm wrestling competition, what we'll call like a behind the scenes or B-roll inside one of my episodes, where we're actually out on your boats, and we put an arm wrestler on a boat. We'd have to find a scouting boat, which would just be there with the film crew to be able to go out and just film as we're floating and fishing and trolling. But it would be great to be able to integrate fishing and what you're doing into arm wrestling, and having that episodically get seen on one of the WSA episodes. I think that would be a tremendous win.
Well, I agree, and it's an amazing collaboration, and there's only 2 people that can make that happen, and you're looking at both of them right now. So consider it done. I think
Perfect.
that's going to be a win-win for everybody that even gets to watch that, and that'll be pretty exciting.
Listen, these arm wrestlers are competitive. I mean, they're gonna, they're. I don't know how good of a fisherman they are. Right? I mean, fishing is a sport,
Yeah,
and people don't understand that fishing is a sport. I mean, it's luck. Let's put fishing as a whole in a perspective, right? You first have to find a fish, which is a skill set.
right,
But to get up upon a fish, you could search and not find it, and then you could be very lucky and find a school of fish, right? I mean,
right.
there's a little bit of level of uncertainty when it comes to fishing and getting on a fish. But then to hook up on a fish, to actually, to have a fish on and to be able to land it, if there's a skill set, right? I mean,
Oh
there's,
yeah,
you have to understand how to work with the drag on a rod. You have to be able to be calm and patient. You have to understand the boat, the position of the boat, where the fish is running. There's a lot of different variables as an angler that if you're not in tune to, you can really have a bad day. Like, I mean, that's a real thing. Right? People don't, it's like arm wrestling. Everybody thinks it's just strength, but there's a lot of acumen to it. Fishing is the same way. You have to understand the sport to be good at it.
oh yeah, absolutely. And both of them, arm wrestling and fishing, come along with injuries, because people get hurt all the time doing both. And there's nothing you could do about it. I say it to Corey all the time. We get our asses kicked by these fish sometimes. You have a great day out there, or some days you just get your ass kicked, and it's just how it is. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the injury can be your ego too. I've been on the boat where But there's nothing worse than losing a fish, especially a winning fish. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the tournament. And I've had it happen to me. I got bird nested, and I mean the worst of the worst. And it was in the Wick tournament for the bluefish. And oh my God, I had this big fish on, and it was just human error. I hit the free spool, I hit the button, and I hit the lever on the lever drag on an avid, and the next thing you know, it was just bird. It was just ugly. And I tell people that story because I'm not ashamed of it. Shit happens out there. It happens to all of us, you know?
Right.
The boat breaks down. You spin a hub. I spun a hub last year. I stretched a cable. You know, things that are out of your control happen, especially out there when you're fishing. And I'm sure things happen during, arm wrestling too, where you make a move,
Sure.
a position, and you shouldn't have moved to do that position, and you lost because of it,
Yeah, there's lanes, right? We preach that all the time in arm wrestling. Finding the right lane, finding your body type's right lane, and staying in it, so that way you have a chance to win. And your opponent's trying to get you out of that lane and put you into their lane. Fishing, arm wrestling takes practice. It takes days, weeks, months, years of practice to become good. Nobody jumps into arm wrestling and is just a world champion.
Right.
There's a lot of conditioning in terms of tendon strength and ligament strength, and there's a lot of soreness. Most of us arm wrestlers, even sitting here talking to you, my ulnar nerve, these two fingers are always numb just because of the tension that I've put on them over the years. I've torn out the MCL in my elbow, and that's healed naturally, but it could have been worse. Guys, bicep tears, pec tears. The broken arms are not really a thing. I know that's kind of the worst case scenario. A lot of people, fear the broken arm, but it's mostly muscle tears in the sport. But fishing, the same thing. Like a lot of people don't realize, when I started to fish competitively, I didn't take it as a unique opportunity just to get out on a boat and hopefully land a fish. We actually went out and practiced. And people will be like, "Well, how did you practice fishing?" And I explained to them, they're just amazed, is that, because you fish for big fish like marlin, and I fished on the Marlin tour, we would go out with 5-gallon buckets. And basically we would, instead of, putting a jig on the end of a rod, we would put 2 or 3 5-gallon buckets in the water. And we would then, the captain, Rhino at the time, he would hit the throttle, and the rod would spin, and we would be moving. And so when you're competitively fishing for marlin, you have a unique value. You're only allowed to handle your own rod and reel. First mate, first deck, captain can't assist you in any way. So we would practice, in rough water. We would practice in calm water, getting it from the gusset and getting me to the chair locked in. And then I would practice reeling in multiple, 5-gallon buckets, and we would practice it for hours. And people would watch us doing this, and then we'd get back to shore, especially on the islands, and they would laugh. And what are you doing? And the answer was simple: is that I'm trying to make sure that when we land and hook up on that big fish, that we do it in a way that we have a chance to land. And that's your biggest fight at that point, is hooking up on a huge fish, but getting it to the boat and not having it break free. And so practice makes perfect. A lot of people don't listen. If I'm going to fish in your tournaments, I'm going to get on some boats, and I'm going to make sure that I'm ready. It's a skill set.
Now,
right?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, nobody wants Captain Gaige talking bad about them after you head back to San Diego. And I know we come there. Can you believe this guy from San Diego lost 3 fish today? We'd have won that tournament if it wasn't for him. You West Coasters need to stay out there.
And I do have an audience I could say that to, but I wouldn't say that. But you are from San Diego, but you did live out here on Long Island. So you knew the waters here very well when you came out. I believe you actually contacted Captain Stu, and Stu put you in touch with us, and you and Megan came out, And we had a fierce competition that day between the two of you, which is on film. It was produced. We did have the GoPros rolling, and you guys had a lot of fun. We actually had a lot of fun with you fishing. It was fun to see that competitive spirit amongst you.
You know what's interesting? I loved growing up on Long Island. In contrast to living out here in San Diego, as I've aged, the warm weather is certainly more conducive for me, right? And being in the field of entertainment, there is some pluses and minuses. I mean, there are a lot of Hollywood, or we'll call film, has moved and migrated back to the East Coast in the last decade. But growing up on Long Island was very, very unique. I grew up in East Patchogue. So on the opposite side of the island,
Yep.
but a lot of people don't realize that I fished for trout for many, many years growing up in Connecticut and a lot of Swan Lakes, and trout was my form of fishing, uniquely young, and fly fishing. I love to fly fish. Um, there was always the unique opportunity to fish and surf fish, off of Smith Point, Fire Island, um, fishing in the Great South Bay. You fish for a lot of snappers. There's a lot of bluefish that went through there. We crabbed a lot. A lot of people don't realize, blue crabs and clamming. Running the big clamming rigs. I had a great childhood. Fishing. I loved it, and uniquely enough, and not at all a bad story when it comes to fishing for marlin and how I got there, but more of a competitive story. When I was growing up, I actually saw on ESPN they had the World Marlin Fishing Championships, and you had to be, up late at night. And back then, that's when ESPN needed content more so than ever. And I remember my father coming in, and I said, "Dad, I'm going to fish on that board." He goes, "That's for rich people." And it basically, at that point, I said, "You know what? I don't care what it takes. I'm going to find my way, into those tournaments." But the competitive nature of fishing and against your friends, the ability to understand how fish live and where they swim and how to lure them in. I love it. That's, to me, if I had a perfect world outside of having to work, and all I had to do was choose one or two things that I could do for enjoyment, fishing would absolutely be one or two in my life. And so fishing on Long Island has a special place for me. I got to come back, and when I called Stu, it was kind of a weird time because Megan and I do our field trip, or I guess it's a field trip, our road
trip.
yeah, our road trip in the summers. I mean, 12,000 miles on my truck in a summer is a lot of miles. But we called Captain Stu, and we were just trying to find something to do, and of course, fishing became that first go-to that I love, and he put us in contact with you, and what a great experience. I mean, just basically trolling out of the harbor there onto the into the sound, and getting a unique perspective of Connecticut versus the city versus Long Island. It was a great experience, and an affordable experience, right? I mean, you can't, and I'm not asking you to raise your prices, Captain.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Don't worry.
So, but those kind of experiences here on the West Coast are very expensive.
Gotcha.
They're not a small dime, experience. And so we had the best of time. And those are things that fishing uniquely brings families together. I always said, whether it's father, daughter, father, son, brothers, sisters, fishing is something that everyone can do and have a fun time and be competitive. And I love it. I mean, I've fished just about everywhere now on Long Island. But I need to catch a big fish in the Sound.
Yes.
I've caught some big fish in the Bay. I've caught some big fish in the ocean. You got to put me on some big fish when I get there for the Sound.
You'll be, believe it or not, you're going to be here in prime time. It's going to be the best fishing for the bass. We're going to go for that 50-inch bass. We're going to put you on the 50-pounder and get you that personal best out there in the Sound for sure. And we will too practice before you come, because this is what me and Corey do. We got to go out and we prospect because these things are moving around. You know, what's the tide? What's the moon cycle? What is it going to be at that time? Like I just picked the date for my tournament, and you know, I based the date of the tournament not to compete against other tournaments in June. We went towards the latter part of June this year based on what's the best tide cycle going to be, and now we're even thinking about making it growing it to be a 2-day event at the end of June because one day, you know, the morning of my tournament, a squall came through for like 2 hours. They had rough seas out there. It was crazy. Started out with a little drizzle in the morning at the lighthouse when we did a shotgun start. And I got to say, half of the boats, we had 20 boats for the first tournament. And I got to say, like 8 of them bailed because they couldn't handle the conditions of the squall that came through from Connecticut across to Huntington. And making it a 2-day event, we might be able to avoid that. And that's why I said, even in the fishing club, we're going to have a 2-week event just so that we can get out there for 2 weeks and fish and go for a specific number of fish for over a, you know, measured over a length. And whoever catches the 5 biggest striped bass would, you know, maybe be the winner. But speaking of competition, I took my kids to Connect Quad. I love fly fishing as well, Greg. And my kids were very competitive. They caught 7 rainbow trout each. And I took a picture of my daughter in the water, in her waders, with a Cabela's hat and the fly rod and the fish in the net, and it was in the water. And they put her on the cover of the Long Island Fisherman magazine. And
Wow.
I created a monster by letting that even happen. I mean, this was the worst photo I ever took in my life. Because to this day, she still says to me, "Daddy, are you on the?" Because I'll be inside in the magazine somewhere and show her, and she's like, "Yeah, but you're not on the cover." she's got
That's it.
she's got
Love it.
that on me now. You mentioned something else with your dad, and you said, "Hey, I see those boats out there, and you got to be rich, and I'm going to go do it." I've been calling out Michael Jordan on my podcast, telling him, "Oh, I'm going to come take him on in one of these Marlin tournaments." Because could you believe he's like one of the most competitive fishermen out there, and he actually is doing pretty good. He's actually placed in a few of them.
You know, what's weird is there's really a big difference between, you know, East Coast and West Coast when it comes to big fish, game fishing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they do catch a lot of marlin off the coast of Carolinas. But you know, it's a different game. You know, I think they catch a lot of striped marlin there.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, we fish for blue marlin and occasionally a black, right? I mean, there's you know, blue are more uh, common when you're out on the islands than anything else. I've been lucky enough to have caught a stripe, a blue, and the short bill, all on the same trip. And I did that one time when I was fishing out from Maui. And when the news came in, I guess I may have been one of 6 fishermen ever to do it. I was like the 6th ever to catch that combination of fish. That's a big deal
Yep.
for fishing on the islands. Uh, and so that you would have thought that uh, for that period of time, I was the greatest angler that was around. But ultimately, you know, that was just a unique, lucky experience. Uh, we just got on the fish. I mean, the ocean's a huge place, right? I mean, it's you never know. But Michael Jordan's success in fishing, excuse me, I think is a true credit to his ability to stay calm and stay focused and have perseverance. I think those are when you're looking at big game fishing as a unique talent, you have to be uniquely calm. You have to be
Absolutely.
able, yeah, you have to be able to dial everything out. You have to be able to put your phone down. You know, distractions cost you fish, and it's patience. It takes a lot of patience. You know, I was telling you a story about 2011. I still think it's 2011. Uh, we were fishing in the Big Blue Challenge in Kona, and that year, unfortunately, Captain Tommy, he used to run the Maui gym. And I haven't stayed in contact with Tommy. It's been a well over 10 years since I talked to him. But his wife had passed. And sadly enough, they fished together forever. They fished in all the tournaments. And Kona's really the hotbed of tournaments when it comes to competitive marlin fishing. It's got the biggest money tournaments. Jody Bright out there runs a great series. He calls it the Kona Classic Series. And he runs tournaments just about every weekend throughout the summer. And it was a 4th of July, and we just came back up south to north into the harbor, and we're turning back around. We're gonna head back south. We're gonna make one more pass down by Mom's Kitchen, which is a small area down off of Kona. And there was Tommy and Seth, and I don't know who the angler was at the time. I want to say the guy was Sean or Scott. I don't remember his name, but they were on there, and I said to Rhino, I said, why don't you bring Tommy over, because I'd like to give my condolences to him for his wife's passing. Say hi to him. We hadn't seen him since he pulled into Kona. It came in late because there was a storm between Maui and Kona, and to cross over, there's some heavy waters. So we're probably 2 hours left in the day, and it's an 8-hour time frame. You fish a time zone for 8 hours, and then you're done. Like, that's it. He comes into the harbor right outside the harbor with us. We talked for a few minutes. Gave my condolences to him. We're all going to meet up for dinner afterwards, and we just made a decision at that point. Tommy said, I'm going to turn back south and head back down south. And I said, okay, we're going to go straight out and head north. And so about 5 minutes after he headed south in the path that we would have went, he hooked up and won. Hooked up the winning fish. I want to say it was close to $1.2 million that he won. As close as a fishing story to winning it all would be, I always said that if there was really a fishing god in heaven, he did the right thing that day. Albeit I'd love to have had $1.2 million in my pocket.
Right.
But if I couldn't, Tommy won. It was just a great time. And we had a great weekend afterwards. When you win that kind of money, and you're not fishermen aren't cheap people, right?
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe his wife was looking down on him, and it couldn't have happened to a better person, for the time.
Yeah.
So
it was a great time, and that's I love fishing in those tournaments, and uniquely enough, most of the Kona tournaments there's minimum poundage, and that the Big Blue is a 500-pound minimum. So you can land the fish if you want to, but you can't qualify as a winning fish unless it's over a 500-pound hookup. And they bring in the polygraphs. Listen, you're talking that kind of money. There was a time where guys would fish the few days before, they find themselves a grander and tie it to a buoy somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, and hopefully the next day they came and they were able to have a whole fish that they could pull into the boat. They'll gut the fish too. If you have a forensic investigation on that fish, they cut the bottom of that fish out. They make sure you didn't put rocks inside.
Right.
Lots of guys over the years have put lead weights inside. Yep. I mean, that it's big money. And that's what I like about that kind of competition, because there's a high level of integrity and inspection. But I can't, at some point I'm going to get back out there, but not until I fish on Captain Gaige's door.
Now,
that might be the win for me is to get out there and see if I can't be the dominant angler on your tour for a summer.
Absolutely, 100%. We're excited to have you on there and do that, because that's a ton of fun. Here on Long Island, we have a bluefish tournament, and they also have a lie detector test at the end of it. They do a polygraph. And, people have cheated over the years. Things have happened. People have been over the demarcation line, and they've, been out of the zone by even just 100 feet, 200 feet where other people saw them. And it's interesting. The winner is always, and I said this, throughout my entire podcast, it's the top 20 people. 19 of them are on the Connecticut side for the bluefish. And there's one guy out in the Peconic, and he won it 2 years in a row, fishing in the Peconic, so my league goes from the Throgs Neck Bridge all the way out to the race. So we cover the entire Long Island Sound, and it's going to be New York and Connecticut, both in the league. There's 5 different divisions. And the coolest thing about it is somewhere throughout the season, every month there's a featured species. And that featured species is the tournament for the month. And you get to catch the three, let's say April, it's striped bass. So it's the three biggest bass that you catch. And there's a fish multiplier. This way, the points throughout the whole season equate to you caught the hardest fish to catch. It gave you more points for catching that fish. It levels the playing field for the whole entire season. We figured all this out. It was a lot of work that went into it. But my point being to this is, at some point, we want to challenge. We want to make it a battle of the sound. New York versus Connecticut, and pick the species. We could do two different ones for bluefish, ones for striped bass. It could be blackfish. It's going to be exciting. I just want to bring competitiveness to the Long Island Sound, and that is exactly what I'm doing.
I'm going on record now. I'm going to go on record now. And when your quality anglers find out that the guy from San Diego comes in and wins it all, there's definitely going to be a ruckus on the North Shore.
The ringer.
Listen, I'm not saying what anybody else isn't thinking. I'm telling you, if I come out there and I start fishing in that tournament, I'm coming out there to win.
I know you are. We're bringing in the ringer, you and Megan. Now, the coolest part about your trip when you were on my boat is hearing about the different legs of this 12,000-mile journey that you take with your truck. It's not just like you cruise out to Long Island. The stops along the way are incredible. It really is. It's so cool. It makes me want to do it for real. I'm not even kidding.
Well, it's funny. I've lived a great life, and I'm going to continue a great life, I hope, for as long as possible. Right? So when we started World Series of Arm Wrestling, you couldn't be just the West Coast. We needed to have kind of a universal U.S.-based value, pull from different regions. First year was only 4 regionals. Now we're at 14, right? But I got back from Dallas, which was our first region. And we were at that point looking at, let's see, we may have went to Virginia next, which was going to be our Northeast regional. And then we came back and did Utah and came back to Riverside. And so I get back from Dallas, and my daughter just gets back. At that time, she was at Oregon State. And she goes, Dad, what are we doing for the summer? I said, I got to get out to Virginia. And, I'm going to drive out there. She goes, awesome. She goes, we're going to hit every state and every capital on that trip. And I said, listen, I'm not getting halfway through and driving back. Your summer is going to be with Dad. Hanging out with your friends is if you get homesick, that's tough. I mean, it's tough love, right? And she was like, no, I want to do this. So we started to go, and she put it all together. She started to put together the states that we wanted to hit, in what order. We kind of GPSed it out. So we would go city to city, leg to leg. And our goal was at that point that we would continue to do this till we hit all 50 states. Obviously, Hawaii and Alaska aren't really, able to road trip to, but and we had already been to Hawaii as her and I with my son Aiden. But we started to do this, and now it's a summer ritual for us. I mean, it's just time, 6 to 8 weeks of her and I in a truck, and driving across the country, seeing national forests. So we saw Glacier Park last year. We saw all of Montana. We saw Mount not McKinley. Mount McKinley. We saw what else did we saw some great national parks throughout the Northwest last year. This year we're going to go to Portland or Maine. I shouldn't say Portland, Maine. We're going to go to Maine. Maine being a huge state, you could spend 3-4 weeks through it.
Oh yeah.
And just go up and down the coast and really enjoy it. That's our last one of continental U.S. We've been to everywhere in the continental U.S. Except for Maine. And then we have to figure out how to get to Alaska within our road trip parameters. But it's just a great time. I love doing it. 12,000 miles on my truck. It's I let the truck rest for 10 months and I pulled out for two. And there's no better time. I've been road tripping with my kids since, my son went off to college in Florida. We would, drive out and drive back every year. And he lived down, he went to a small school at the bottom of the peninsula down in Fort Myers. And so we would road trip out there. My kids uniquely always want to tell you that they helped out with the driving. I don't think I ever had them, other than if they had to move the truck, because we were parked wrong or something like that. It's a great time. I get to spend it with my kids. I get to see, the country is such an amazing value. People don't realize just the scenic value and the history that you can really enjoy by traveling the U.S. in a way that's not rushed. Uh, Seeing these amazing, state capitol buildings and the architecture, and getting to understand some of the history of areas, and it's I listen. I guess I'm geeky when it comes to that stuff, but I'm a good geek when it comes to that. I love it.
Yeah.
It's well worth it.
There's no doubt about it. It's not geeky. It's actually something very cool. 3 years ago, I took my kids down to Florida for their first trip. They're 11 and 13 now. So we drove down specifically so that they could see everything along the way. And I got to tell you, one of my biggest memories was when we got to Georgia and they saw their first palm tree. And it was like they couldn't believe that they saw this palm tree. It was like they thought they were in paradise and they were in Georgia. Peaches and, you get peaches and palm trees. But it was very cool. And it's memories like that you create along the way that it makes it real special. And that's the reason why we do it,
I agree. She doesn't realize when I get back to Long Island, though, I spin the dock. But she's like, Dad, why do you keep doing this? I said, it's, we cruise the dock, spin the dock. And, Bellport Dock growing up was our, as the kids, was our epicenter of fishing.
Mm-hmm.
We fished snapper there. Depending on season, you catch a blue, but we would crab there, we would clam there. And so, growing up on the island, that was kind of the thing when you were a young kid. The dock on a weekend night in the summer was the place to be. I mean, that's, whether we were on the North Shore, you could be in a Port Jaffrey, or North Port or anything like that. For us, it was, Bellport in this case. That's where kids got together.
Yeah.
It really was a different time and a place. I mean, kids don't realize that when we were growing up, you couldn't pick up a cell phone, right? You said, we'll meet at the dock at 8:00 or 7:00 or 9:00 or you couldn't figure out where to go, with a GPS. You got a Rand McNally map and you kind of figured out the roads you had to turn on, right? It was a different time. And so to be able to come back to the island and cruise the dock and we would, I'll tell you, I literally love doing it to today. Back in the day, we would go from Bellport to Patchogue to Port Jeff on a weekend night. So, I was just in that time frame where the legal age went from 18 to 21 in drinking. But we still drank at 18, I think, because it was kind of like, well, you got screwed out of it, so we're going to let you drink anyway, right? And so we, as kids, we would go up to Port Jeff, and there were nightclubs up at Port Jeff that we used to spend time in, and then we'd head out to Jones Beach and go out there, and then the summers we would go out to the Hamptons, and you had Myers Rum, and you had I think the Boardy Barn is still out there, right? I think that's still going.
They actually just tried to reintroduce. I think they were opening up a new version of it, but yes, it did close down at one point.
Those were great times. I mean, and to have bonfires on the beach, and it was a different way of. It was a real way of socializing and living.
Yeah.
So, getting back to the island and having, she's like, Dad, why do you tell me all these crappy old stories? I said, because I'm reliving my glory days with you, Megan. I'll give you a break, right? I mean, it's, but yeah, those are special things. I mean, and having a story that she could pass on is important too. She goes, my dad spun this damn dock 5 times. Why the hell did they do that? Right? I mean, But
Exactly.
I love it.
Now
Oh,
I grew up and graduated Northport High School, and I grew up in East Northport. And I would get on the bus at the East Northport train station and take the bus down to Northport Village and get on the town dock with my bucket. My grandfather bought me my first fishing rod. It was a 2-piece rod from Modell's, and I would go down to the dock and I'd fish. I'd load it up with snapper and everything that I caught, and I'd put it take the bucket with me and get back on the bus. And the bus driver was so cool. He didn't care that I had water and fish in this bucket. He let me bring it home because he was into fishing. So it was so cool that he made my experience. He could have made it a nightmare and be like, "You're not bringing that on my bus, kid." But it was just such a cool experience fishing from the dock as a kid. My kids started when I ran the Freedom Boat Club in Northport. They started fishing for snapper from the dock, and now I mean, they went to the beach with me on the South Shores where you were talking. They had one summer where I tagged 53 sharks for Noah, and my kids were catching 6 and 7 foot duskies like it was nothing. Now they catch 40-inch striped bass with my friends with flutter spoons on the boat. And it's just like they've grown into, being on the water and fishing, and they love it as much as I do. And we talk about that on the podcast a lot, how we have to introduce this to the kids and show them how to do it. Take them to Connect Quad, show them the proper etiquette. We talk about it. We talked about this in the club too. There's these 2 kids in our area that drive they drive their dad's boat, and it's a regulator with twin engines on it, and they do everything wrong out there. And they pull up to, they drive through the bunker when the birds are working, and they drive right through a bunch of boats fishing when they're on fish. They've casted lures onto other guys' boats. I mean, when I tell you the etiquette, they just do everything wrong. Yet here's daddy giving them this, $600,000 boat to go take out and drive around the Long Island Sound. And they're probably like 15, 16 years old. And, you just got to teach these kids the right way. And that's what I'm all about. It really is. I think it's important.
it's very important. I mean, fishing is a almost a generational value that you pass along, right? The rules of fishing haven't changed. Yeah, maybe the equipment's gotten better, maybe the boats are faster, maybe the boats are more quiet or have better amenities to them. But fishing's a game of etiquette. It's like golf.
100%.
You don't cross over somebody's line. You don't go through somebody's uh, uh, line of hook when they're on a fish. There are things that you just don't do. And I'll tell you, when you're on the island, when you're over in fishing with the locals in Hawaii, etiquette you better know fast because the next thing you know, you're looking at a shotgun, and they don't like you over there anyway. Let me put it.
Right.
I literally have had guys run over my line, when I'm just fishing wreck wise, and I've had it happen in a tournament one time where the locals they didn't like the fact that I was a mainland, and
Right.
so I was out, and this one guy again, I know who he is, but I mean this is decades ago. We were on a fish, and he tried to cross the line and cut the line. And so he wasn't successful the first time, and he came back around the second time, and I grabbed it at the time, what we would call an equalizer, and as you heard it lock in the shell, they completely understood that they weren't going to do it again, and that etiquette was above all important, and never happened again. But that's having a shotgun hole in your boat or worse will teach you not to be foolish when you're on the waters out there.
Now,
Um,
what's the word out there that they use? Because it's more of like, I mean, it's like religion, but it's not. What is it? I mean, it's like the belief of the sharks that their ancestors that came back and they bite the heart of the tuna to pay homage to the fish they caught and killed, and it's just a different way of life. It really is. Fishing is amazing.
there are certainly a rule set, or I don't even know what they would call it. They do have a term for it,
Right.
Captain Gaige. I apologize. But there are some real etiquette and spiritual rules out there. You don't land the shark. That's number one. You don't kill a shark.
Yep.
That they believe that their ancestors and their holy people come back in the form of sharks. And unless a shark attacks a human, then That's the only time where they'll go out and kill a shark. But it's there's a lot of spirituality to that. There's a lot of prayer. There's a lot of preparation that goes on in the communities when it comes to fishing. When you are lucky enough to get on a fish pile, and we've been lucky enough in the past when I've been rec fishing and practicing, we pull in 40, 50 different species, mahi and ono and all kinds of jack, and we bring them back to the communities, and we give them to communities. We don't sell them to the fish market.
Right.
The fish markets have their own boats, right? If you go out, you're blessed to be on their waters, and the blessing that you get back is, and it pays back that blessing in multiple folds. It's a different experience when you fish over. And not to say that shark fishing and that sort of thing isn't accepted as a practice on other bodies of water, but in on the islands, it's absolutely taboo.
That was the word we were looking for, was spiritual. I believe fishing there it's way more spiritual than it is here in, Long Island and New York and the tri-state area. But in Kauai, so there was a show I used to watch, and this show actually got me into kayaking. And I believe the name of it was called Pacific Warriors. And you can only get little glimpse of it now on YouTube. It's not even available. Like, I can't find it anywhere. And if somebody knows where to find it, please shoot me a comment in the comments below, throw a message, or maybe a link, because it was an incredible show about Hawaii and these kayakers that go out and fish, and just there was like a brotherhood, yet it was competitive, and then they had the woman with them that was a spear fisherman who would go in the water, and just very spiritual about the way that they fished. And it was just so cool. You saw a new culture, and it opened my eyes to like wanting to go do something along those lines. It was so cool.
Well, they fish for necessity, right? They fish for survival. I mean, culturally, before the integration of tourism on the island, I mean, the islanders as a whole, fishing was their staple of nutrition, right? And you only took as much from the ocean as you needed. And to be gluttonous or to be overindulging or to kill for no reason was really looked as almost as a criminal act. And culturally it's a family value. And it's interesting because you said it was a woman who was spearfishing, but culturally in Hawaii on the islands, women are that fishing component. They do spearfish. That is the trade, if you will, of fishing, or that's their acumen of fishing is women pass on the spearfishing value, and that's an art form. I've watched women, on the backside of Kona, in a lot of the different offshoot rivers that go into the ocean. Coming out from the high grounds of the mountain, they spearfish for a lot of their subsistence, and that's how they feed themselves. I mean, literally, that's how they feed themselves.
Oh yeah, they showed it on the show. They showed that, how they would catch the fish and have to bring them back, and that's how they made money to pay for their families to eat food, and the fish was food. So nothing went to waste. It was just a cool experience. And like you said, it was criminal, but it was more like a sin if you did something wrong, as far as the handling the fish and doing the wrong thing, keeping too many, or catching something that you couldn't keep, or along those lines.
Yeah, it really is. It's you really have to have a value for a what's the best word we can use for this? A simplistic time and value, I guess, maybe the right word. And there's better words, but if you peel away all of the cell phones, and you peel away all of the processed foods, and you peel away the value of having a supermarket or a convenience store, and you get just the real living, they still really live on the islands over there. They raise chickens, they catch fish, they raise agricultural, in terms of, yeah, pineapples are big over there, and sugar cane is big over there, but they, corn and staples. They're still a very large community on the islands that live in a very organic way. And it's fun to be in that aspect. And, you know, as I grow older, I envy that. There's no distractions in that kind of life. And I think it brings a level of peace to people, because they don't have all of the drama. They're not worried about who made a bad comment about them on Facebook or
Right.
Instagram, or if their best friend didn't like their story, and why didn't they like their story, and why did he like somebody else's story. There's none of that there. You strip it down. It's a very very ancient values of living, and it's for me, I wish I could go there. I don't know that my lifestyle would ever enable me to be there. But it is a very envious place to be. And it, another time, I mean, me and I went through the Dakotas and the Montanas this past summer, and for hours and hundreds of miles there was no cell phone signal. And my daughter was always asking me if I was okay, because I would keep going to my phone, not because I needed to know where I needed to go. I mean, whatever road we were on was for 200 miles.
Right.
Just because we're so used to having that constant inundation of text messaging
Yep.
or
Check in.
emails.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Uh,
too
it,
accessible.
it, in the same way, when you saw these ranches and these huge, singular populated areas, or 100 people or less, the quality of life, I think, must be outstanding. To get up in the morning and just have to, to do your chores, to make sure that the cattle are fed, the horses are run, the livestock's taken care of, the crops are planted and then sowed and then sold. And to be able to jump on your horse and ride to a mountain at the end of the day, and you'll put your hand in a stream of water, without the worry about anybody judging you, or whether or not you got enough marketing out on Facebook for your next release, or did the editor get this done? Was the soundtrack copyright infringed? All these things that we deal with, right? To
Yep.
just be able to say, hey, my day is done. Fed the horses, plowed the fields, planted my crops, got my cattle back to the barn, got them, milked or whatever, got my eggs from my hen house, and then at the end of the day, sit on my porch and with my family and just live life. That's a lost privilege, but it's certainly an envious one at times.
I think you said it best about the islands when you said that we're more envious of the way and the culture of what they were doing. When I watched that show, Pacific Warriors, I was 100% envious and wanted to get on a kayak and go out into the deep blue sea where there were serious pelagic fish, and the worry of getting taxed by the tax man, and the sharks that were, she's down there looking at these sharks that she's dealing with, these great whites that are circling them on these kayaks while they kept reeling in, marlin, sailfish, mahi. It was so spiritual. It was something so cool about it that I wish I had something like that here. 2 years ago, I went down to Florida. I took my nieces and nephews out. Now, this was my first experience on tuna. I had not gone tuna fishing yet. I mean, it's on the bucket list. Corey, my mate, he was out a lot last year. I think he did like 10 to 12 trips on different guys going to, he made like 4 or 5, maybe 6 runs to the canyons, and did a lot of pelagic fishing. And I took my nieces and nephews out of Port Everglades in Florida, and we went for sailfish and tuna. And now my nephew, who's 24, Donovan, he had never caught, he only freshwater fished in Florida, which is something we did out back in my dad's place. And we were catching all kinds of peacock bass and fun fish in the lakes there. And it was a ton of fun. I hooked into a blackfin tuna. Now, I didn't know what size, and they're telling me when they see it, this thing is huge, and I'm seeing it looks like, it looks like a mini tuna to me after watching like Wicked Tuna and the bluefin and the yellowfins and the big eyes. And they're telling me that thing is huge, and it's like a 30-pound blackfin tuna or a 40-pound blackfin tuna. It's pretty big. So
Right.
we get it on the boat, take a picture with it. That goes in the ice. That goes on the ice, and before you know it, it's this fish just hit the ice, and one of the kite rods goes off, and we hook up with a sailfish. They were using live goggle eyes bait, and sailfish hits, line screaming out, and he hands the rod to my nephew who has never saltwater fished before. And when I tell you, Donovan is doing everything wrong. He's pointing the rod at the fish. It's like straight. There's no bend in the rod. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, I was just tired from reeling in this blackfin tuna. And I said to him, I'm like, if you lose this fish, I'm going to kill you. You better do this right. Listen to the mate. Listen to what he tells you to do. And believe it or not, he did everything wrong and he landed the fish, and he's got an epic photograph of him with the sailfish on the back of the boat. Obviously, they got to be released. But that was just so, I got to say, it was like a whole nother world for me because, here I am on Long Island. Striped bass is like the big thing for us. I catch striped bass. Granted, you go out to the South Shore, it's a whole nother ball game. You can get out to the canyons. You can go, catch some big eye and bluefin and mahi and go to the Rockaways and do it. You don't have to go far.
Right.
But I'm on the North Shore of the island, so it's a little bit different. But this year, me and Corey are definitely venturing. We spent a day out at the Montauk Canyon Challenge, which is hosted by a buddy of mine, Captain Chris Squeary, and they hosted it at the Montauk Yacht Club last year. This year, it's at I think it's at Gossman's out in Montauk, and I'm excited to spend 8 days out there for that tournament this year. But I am going to make my way, into the ocean, deep sea, get into these pelagic species. One of the guys in our fishing club just came back from down south and he caught a striped marlin. Greg, when I tell you the photograph he had, he couldn't even get the whole fish in the photograph. They were halfway up the gunnel of the boat and they took it from the stern and you still can't see the tail of the fish. And this thing is just, oh my God. I was like, are you kidding me? So when you talk about these, big, blue marlin, black marlin. These, that's a serious, to me, that's a serious Costa Rica species. Panama City, that's the bucket list of getting down there and doing that kind of fishing. So hearing it from you, when you told me on my boat, I was like, holy cow, they trained with buckets for this, that's next level.
Yeah, it was fun. Listen, we got to do more fishing, Captain Gaige. That's at the end of the day. If this podcast has not taught us anything, it has certainly taught us that we need to integrate World Series with fishing, and you and I need to do more fishing.
100%. But we knew that already. And that's why when I sent you the invite, I knew there was going to be no hesitation on your part because of the Hollywood producer in you. Seriously, you have a very busy lifestyle. You're flying down. I think you even have a trip this week. You're going down to the Carolinas for the tournament.
Yeah. Yeah. I fly out on Thursday. I fly into Nashville, and then as I said, I go to Knoxville. I pick up Megan, and then we drive to South Carolina. And then I'm actually there for a full 2 weeks. I head back up to Ohio, not for a regional, but a bunch of my sponsors are at the Arnold Classic, which arm wrestling is kind of integratable between strength sports and bodybuilding. They're all in the same kind of genre. So I go up to Ohio, to Columbus. I meet with Neil Haley, one of our podcasters as well there. Then I come back down. I fly back from Nashville to San Diego. And then we are tentatively shooting a second season for Billboards Inc., which is a reality show. They've picked us up to shoot a second season for them. Their first season is currently out on Prime and Tubi and Apple TV. And we're a distribution company as well. We distribute that for them. And we've got another show that we're putting together, two shows. One is called The Next Celebrity Bodyguard. That's got Michael Jai White attached to the project as the host.
Nice.
That's really a fun one. And then I'm shooting a new TV series called Fit Factor with Monica Brandt, who was Miss Olympia Fitness in '97, and Wendy Fortino, who is a current IFBB pro competitor and a journalist with Muscle and Fitness. So we're shooting a new reality / docuseries on aging women fitness on a competitive, not competitive end, but with competitive people and how they look at fitness and their insight into the world of biohacking and product taking. It's more of a show geared towards a female audience, but certainly we're going to have some influential men on there in the space. Mike O'Hearn, who is like everybody's favorite guy to love or hate. He'll be on the show. I think we're going to have Chef Rush, who is at one point a chef to the president. I think back in the Obama administration.
Wow.
He was a bodybuilder and now a chef out in LA. To some real people. Misha Tate is attached to the project, ex-UFC fighter. We're really going to dive into a lot of the quality of life conversations with that show, as well as put the aspect of training involved, because these women are the epitome of success in fitness and training, and getting their bodies to sustain time. So I'm excited about that show. And then we have one other show that we are going to shoot a pilot for called L'Entourage. That's a project with one of our partners, Deanna Millay. She came up with a sequel-esque kind of value to Entourage, but more with women. I think that show is going to do very, very well. We've scripted it for a pilot shoot on that. Matter of fact, just out in Northport area, the East Northport area, our writer Tiffany Castillo lives. She actually is well known out there. She's does some managing for Justina Valentine, and she's a writer. She's got a few shows on Hulu, so she's part of the G2F Media Group as our director of content development. So we've got a pretty good slate of projects that are lined up, and we're excited about it. I mean, I think the mark of success for entertainment production teams are how busy you are, right?
Oh yeah.
It's not what your best last show was. It's how much continuity you can keep in the system in order to stay busy and stay relevant.
Absolutely. And speaking of busy, so I'm here in this 10,000 square foot production facility, and my partner Martin, he owns 12 film festivals. And you mentioned to me that you have something in the works with the film festival.
Yeah, we're gonna have an inaugural film festival this year called Radiate Film Festival and Awards. Radiate TV is a unique value because it's all about independent creators, feature films, shorts, reality shows, podcasters. We're going to bring in a value of music as well, independent music artists and videos. And so the growth factor really is a unique, atypical in many aspects, because we're not bringing Godfather 1, 2, 3 on there to promote and have people watch or mainstream movies. We're bringing on shows that have don't have a large audience base or up and coming people. We're kind of the discovery zone of them, if you will. And we want to create an award and reward system with that film festival. We're going to have it in Marina Del Rey. I'm teetering on a 2-day event, but it's probably going to be a day and a half event. It's probably going to be a Friday night mixer in Marina Del Rey, and then Saturday a film festival where we'll have a panel of guests. We've got some pretty recognized stars that are going to come out and support us on the West Coast, and ultimately give out a bunch of awards, and then uniquely, hopefully, be able to bring in some value of content for us to continue to grow Radiate. So
right.
It goes hand in hand. As a distribution company, as well as a production company, we're always looking for talented feature filmmakers and short makers and reality show makers to be able to put on streaming platforms and to pitch to the networks. But in this case, we're going to reward those who have products that may not be quite ready to get there, but are building and are accessible. And we're gonna have a fun time doing it. I mean, it's not unique. but it's unique to us.
And that's great. It doesn't have to be unique, but unique to you makes it just adds another level of excitement, because when you're doing new stuff like this, it really is a ton of fun because you're new to it. So you have this energy that the other guys may be a little burnt in something that have been doing it. Like, he's done 12 film festivals. He's not as excited as his 13th film festival as you are about your first one. So that's what I mean, as far as.
Well, and here's the great thing about being in the business as he is that the fact that he's coming up on 13 means that he's doing something well, beyond right. So that's the longevity is the key to success in anything you do, especially entertainment. And you're in a 10,000 square foot studio. This is something that he's created. He has put him and positioned himself, as well as you, in a place where you're readily accepted and accessible to be able to deliver for clients. And that's, people don't understand the unique value of that, and because they think that it's you have to be you have to be with Sony or Warner Brothers or whomever to have found that level of success. But the success lies in each individual's contribution, and obviously you guys are doing it right out there.
Yeah, and his newest one that he hasn't ventured into yet, so it is new to him, is he's just doing a horror film festival, which he's never done before. And he's excited about it, just like you're excited about the one you're doing, because it's your first one. He's never done a horror film festival before. So now it's like a whole nother level. He's reviewing all these films. It's like, there's a lot of work involved. People don't realize how much work goes into it.
Listen, and horror and sex sells. If for any reason, if you're a creative person that just happened to come onto this, onto us talking arm wrestling and fishing, if you really want the insight of something that's usually fail safe, horror thrillers and consensual and content driven sexy films sell.
So
it always makes money.
So here's
rom-coms, not so much.
So here's 15 hockey players walk into the studio this morning to watch the USA take on Canada at 8 a.m. We had a watch party here. And I kid you not, out of 15 guys, 15 of them said, "You guys definitely film porn here." That was the first words out of everybody's mouth. And we're like, dude, we live in New York. Nobody's filming porn here. But I mean, they have sets of bedrooms, of bathrooms, of living rooms. So in the 10,000 square feet, there's all these sets that are already built for, and they're always changing things, and the furniture and the walls and the paint and whatnot. So everything's changing for movies and for sets, but it's right here in here, and they see a tub and they see a bed and they're like, "You guys are definitely filming pornos." We were cracking up. I was dying this morning.
It's $1 trillion industry that nobody seems to have ever watched. Right?
Nobody admits to watching, which is just bullshit. They should all just come out and say, "Yeah, we all watch porn. That's why it's $13 trillion industry."
Yeah, it's like, it's the best kept secret in the world.
That's right.
Well, it used to be the Epstein files, but those are out now. Now it's still porn, right? I mean,
that's right. I'm gonna actually send you. I'll put some up here on the podcast. I can let people see, because I'll put up some of the pictures from the studio. But I'll actually send you a little video FaceTime. I'll walk around. I'll show you what's going on here. It's actually pretty incredible. There's a full blown out kitchen in here for a cooking show. So I mean, I have a gas stove. I can go cook a turkey right now. It's a real kitchen with all the lighting already done in it to just turn it on, go over there, hit the switches, and turn the cameras on. They got the red cameras and all the big stuff here. So it's serious production. Yeah, it's serious production on a serious level, and it's fun to be involved in this. And when I thought of you from the stories you told me on the boat, and I was like, oh my God, not only is he a fisherman, but he's a Hollywood producer, and here I am sitting in with all these guys talking about stuff. You would be a perfect shoe-in fit in the conversations, in any of the conversations that go on here, because you're very intellectual on that level of what's going on in the film industry and everything as far as producing is concerned. So it was great to have you on here, and I was super excited when you said you would come on for sure.
I was as well. I mean, this is the highlight of my week for sure.
No doubt. I really appreciate that, because that means a lot to us and here at Bay Rats and Buoys. And I can't wait to get you on the boat and get you on some big fish here. And the fact that you told me you're already coming up in May has me even more excited because that's right around the corner. April 15th is like 52 days away. Not that I'm counting.
Funny enough, Megan graduates May 16th. I've got to figure out how or what or where she has to finish up her grad programming after that. But I am scheduled to fly out, I think, the 28th, which is the Thursday or the Saturday into JFK. And then I'm going to try to get out there semi early. I'm going to see if there's a red eye. We lose 3 hours coming your way. So it's kind of always it's a hard trip to plan if you want to get an extra day out there. So I'll probably take the red eye out on that Wednesday night, get in Thursday morning, and then I'll have Thursday, Friday, up until probably Friday evening available. Saturday's the tournament. I'll stay Sunday to keep away from the rush to get back to the airport. Then I'll leave probably Monday morning.
Now you said everybody knows you're out in sunny San Diego. Okay. You already rubbed in the 78 degrees. And I told you when you said you can go on at 3:00 your time, which is Pacific Standard Time. And that's 3 hours earlier than we are here at 6:00. And I told you, well, we're getting like, a minimum of like a foot of snow. And you were like, oh, wow, Long Island's getting pounded. You could walk across the Great South Bay right now. You could just walk right across. It's frozen.
Seen it. It's amazing. I haven't seen that happen since I was a kid.
Yep.
It's been that long. I've seen some of the pictures out there from friends and athletes that I know that are out there. Listen, I love looking at the pictures, and I'm glad I'm where there's nowhere even an inch of ice or snow. The only time I see something that says 2 degrees is if I put my
in the freezer
from Fahrenheit to Celsius.
Yeah. Now you were in your house looking to get out of the sunshine because it was blurring your camera. You were getting blown out with the camera for the podcast. Now we also, all the listeners and everybody here owes your son Aiden a big thank you, who's in the Marine Corps, and we can't leave him out because you travel around. But talk about traveling for him. He's in Norway right now. How cool is that?
More like cold. I mean, he sent me pictures today. Feet of snow.
22 feet. Yeah, 22 feet.
Not inches of snow, feet of snow.
That's incredible.
Great kid. I mean, he really found his tribe. I mean, that's kind of a clicky word of today, but he found people in the uniqueness of serving with the Marine Corps. He does extremely well. They continue to progress him in a way that's career driven for him, and he enjoys it. He is going to go into, I believe, Force Recon when he gets back, which is a branch of special forces for the Marine Corps. He is excited. I'm extremely proud of both my children. Certainly, my oldest being Aiden, and my son. I can't ask for a better hero in my life or role model in my life than to look at my son and see just the terrific young man who's not afraid to be a part of the solution, and do so in a way that's a selfless, full honor value of serving, whether he was in the Marines, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Coast Guard. Just serve is such a unique internal gift that you give to all of us. And the thank yous are never enough for those men and women. So,
no. That's why I brought it up for all our listeners to thank him, because he definitely deserves that. And I see the proud pictures you post, and I think it's awesome. And even on your Instagram account, it literally, your kids are mentioned in the bio right away, the first thing you talk about. So that's why we talk about it. It's not just Megan.
She gets more. So as funny enough as it is, Aiden actually is on the opening of the ESPN episode that's airing. So he's got a unique value, and Megan's, gets photo credit for, when we do press releases, she was photo credited for Muscle and Fitness, and she's been on the shows, and you can see her in the episode. So I guess dad's giving them a little bit of a cool experience. That's for sure.
Yeah, hell
Uh,
yeah.
at least some talking points amongst their friends.
Right, exactly. 100%. So that's a great thing when you interweave them into the projects and whatnot. There's no better feeling when they're involved and they get some notoriety from it, especially amongst their peers who look at it a little differently because, for them to want to show it off is even a more proud moment for you that they actually want to show it to their friends with today's social media the way it is.
I mean, it's like, it's just like your daughter being on the cover of the magazine, right? It's kind of who's going to one up me now?
Exactly. I knew how do you outdo this now? So yeah, so I want you to know, Greg, you're hearing this right here on Bay Rats and Buoys. I am working on getting on that cover and outdoing it. And it may be with a picture with a fish with you. So
I was to
hopefully
say we got a goal.
that's it. When we get together, we are definitely going to come up with a plan and catch some big fish here on Long Island. I can't wait to have you back up here. We did have a great trip last year, and I'm super glad Captain Stu recommended you to us, and you gave me a call. We were able to get you out. That was a pretty close, like when you called, we had to get out like the next day or so, right?
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
pretty. It was the same day or the next day. It was pretty quick. I think it was the next
It
day.
was it was a great trip. I mean, we did the evening trip with you. We got to see a great sunset. I mean, in terms of experience, top rated. If you're out on Long Island and you don't take Captain Gaige out on an opportunity of, that end of the day 4 to 6 hour, trip that you have there, he spins great tunes. Listen, we had the Who. I think Eminence Front was playing at one point. He was bringing all the 80 tunes in there. The sun was amazing sunset. We had great pictures. You put us on to fish. Uh, I mean, what else?
I
You checked
appreciate.
all the boxes. It was amazing.
I appreciate the kind words. I really do. It does mean a lot to us. We take that to heart because we do put a lot of work into that. There's a little prerequisite stuff, like you say, to make that all happen. It's funny you said the music, though, because my previous career of 25 years, I was in the entertainment industry, from a professional dancer and a DJ and a master of ceremony. And the music means something to me on the boat, but it's funny. Somebody actually wrote in the Google reviews the music was as good as the fishing, and we had an amazing fishing day. They caught like a ridiculous number of fish, but they said the music was as good as the fishing, and that really cracked me up because we try to make it so that it's I forgot what a music buff you were. Because on the boat now you started getting into all the bands and the music and all the people and that's where you blew me away. I was like, no way. We related on so many levels. I was like, I thought it was really cool, man. I had a great time with you and Megan for sure. Truthfully,
It was. It was amazing.
yeah, it really was. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedule to get on here with the Bay Rats and Buoys listeners. We do have a great fan base. This is incredible. So I put it out on Buzzsprout. It goes out to all the different platforms where it does really good. It gets about 55,000 views a month on Facebook alone. And YouTube really wasn't the platform for me to go push out and go crazy with. However, I just got a text message via the internet, probably more of a messaging email from a guy in Australia. And he says, I love the show. Will you send me a Bay Rats and Buoys sticker? So I really have to go to the post office and find out. I mean, this could be a $75 venture. I don't even care. But somebody in Australia wants to put my podcast sticker on his boat and sent me the message. And I got to say, I thought that was the coolest thing. I really did.
That makes it all worthwhile.
It really does. At the end of the day, people that ask for these things, it really makes us proud of what we do. Because when I started this, Greg, I sat on the back of the boat October 2 years ago, and I said, I'm just going to sit on the back of the boat and start my podcast. I have no problem talking on the mic. I was an MC. So I just sat with a GoPro and a microphone, and that was it. And then it grew into sponsorships and tournaments and a league. And before you knew it, it was like, holy cow, it's got a base, it's got a fan base, and we love doing it. I'm passionate about it. And we're just going to keep it going. And I can't thank you enough. Out of all the people from San Diego to New York, I can't thank you enough for coming on today's episode. It was awesome.
Anytime. I mean that sincerely. This is great. I can't say I could spend a better couple hours with doing anything else on a Sunday than to be here and to be able to talk fishing and just kind of chat it up. It's been great.
Yeah, it really has. And I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm going to close it out with a big thank you to Gregg Sharp, Hollywood producer and CEO of the World Series of Arm Wrestling on ESPN and so many other platforms. That's only the beginning. I hope this thing really blows up for you as far as season 2, season 1, everything that you're doing. I can't wait to see what you got coming up in 2026. I'm sure it's going to be a fun year for you. You have a busy schedule and a lot planned, so I'm looking forward to seeing what you bring to us in the next couple of months, and hopefully I see you in May.
You will. I appreciate it. You guys stay safe out there. There's a lot of snow coming down.
Yep. We definitely have some snow on the way. Guys, Captain Gaige, Gregg Sharp signing off. Over and out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bay Rats and Buoys. Be sure to visit sandcitycharter.com and follow Captain Gaige on all our social media channels.